The alien mother wept, saying she couldn't save her, and I acted without thinking HFY read it. The orbital refuge drifted in silence, broken only by distant alarms and the low hum of failing engines. Lights flickered along the curved metal halls, casting long shadows over frightened faces. Families from many worlds sat huddled together, holding what little they had managed to save. Outside the viewing ports, the planet below burned, its surface scarred by fire and smoke. The war had come without warning, and now all that remained was escape or death. Eli moved through the corridor with steady steps, though his body ached from exhaustion. He was human, tall but worn down, his medical jacket stained with blood that was not all his own. He had been awake for almost 2 days, moving from one injured survivor to another, doing what he could with supplies that were never enough. He did not think of himself as brave. He simply kept going because stopping meant people would die. As he passed the refugee hall near the central med bay, a sound cut through the noise of alarms and voices. It was a soft sound, almost drowned out by the chaos, but it carried a weight that made him slow down. Someone was crying. Not the sharp cries of panic, but deep, broken sobs that came from a place beyond fear. Eli followed the sound and saw an alien woman kneeling beside a transparent medical cradle. Her skin was pale blue, her long fingers shaking as they rested against the glass. Her eyes were large and dark, filled with tears that rolled freely down her face. Inside the cradle lay a small child, no older than 6 by human standards. The child's chest barely moved, and faint lights on the cradle blinked in warning colors. The mother looked up as Eli approached. Her voice trembled when she spoke. She said her name was Lyra. She said her daughter was called Naira. The words came slowly, shaped by grief and a language she had learned only recently. Lyra said Naira had been exposed to radiation when their city fell. Their species was sensitive to it, far more than most. Their medicine could heal many things, but not this. The child's blood was breaking down, her organs failing one by one. The cradle was only delaying the end. Eli checked the readings, though he already knew what they would show. The numbers were terrible. The child should not still be alive. He asked if any specialists were available. Lyra shook her head. All had been lost in the attack or were treating others just as hopeless. Lyra pressed her forehead to the glass and whispered that she could not save her child. She said she had begged the officers to let Naira onto the evacuation ships, but terminal cases were refused. The ships could not risk carrying someone who might die during jump. Lyra had been told to say goodbye. Eli felt something tighten in his chest. He had heard words like these too many times. Still, something about the way Lyra spoke, calm now in her despair, struck him deeply. She was no longer asking for help. She had already accepted the loss. He told her he was sorry. The words felt weak like they always did. He turned to leave, but his eyes fell again on the child. Naira's face was peaceful, unaware of the end waiting for her. Eli remembered other faces, other children, human and alien alike, that he had watched slip away. A thought rose in his mind, unwanted and dangerous. He pushed it down at first. It was foolish. It broke every rule he knew, but the thought would not leave. He turned back to Lyra and asked her a question so quietly it almost felt like a sin. He asked what would happen if blood from another species was used. Lyra stared at him, confused. She said it was forbidden. Their biology was too different. The risk of rejection or worse was almost certain death. No council would approve it. Eli nodded. He knew all that. He had studied enough alien medicine to understand the dangers, but he also knew something else. Humans were strange. Their bodies adapted in ways that surprised even themselves. Their blood carried not just oxygen, but resilience born from millions of years of survival. He did not say any of this aloud. Instead, he looked at Naira again and felt the weight of the moment press down on him. Around them the station groaned and another alarm sounded, warning of structural failure in a distant sector. Time was running out. Lyra saw something change in Eli's expression. Her sobbing slowed. She asked him what he was thinking. Eli took a slow breath. He said he did not know if it would work. He said it might kill the child instantly. He said it might kill him too. He made no promises. Lyra reached out and grabbed his sleeve. Her grip was weak but desperate. She said her daughter was already dying. She said if there was even a small chance, she wanted it. Eli looked at the med bay door. He knew the officers would stop him if they knew. He knew he could be charged, imprisoned, or worse. He also knew that if he walked away, Naira would be dead within hours. He made his choice without saying another word. Eli activated the emergency privacy seal on the med bay and guided the cradle inside. The door slid shut behind them, locking out the world. As the lights inside brightened, Eli felt his hands shake for the first time since the evacuation began. Outside the door, Lyra sank to the floor, tears falling silently as she waited. She did not know if she would ever see her daughter alive again. She only knew that a human had heard her cry, and instead of turning away, he had stopped. Inside the med bay, Eli prepared the equipment, his heart pounding. He knew that once he began, there would be no turning back. And somewhere deep within him, fear and hope twisted together as one. Eli's hands hovered over the equipment, shaking despite his efforts to steady them. Every warning he had learned in his medical training screamed at him to stop, to wait for council approval, for proper alien specialists to be present. But every time he looked at Naira, her tiny chest barely rising and falling, he felt the weight of choice pressing down. She was slipping away, and Lyra's face, pale and strained from hours of tears, reminded him that time was not his ally. He took a deep breath and began preparing a transfusion. He had scavenged what he could from the human medical supplies still aboard the station. A small volume of his blood could be enough to test the reaction, enough to give her cells a chance. He did not know if it would work. The textbooks did not cover this. No council had ever sanctioned it. Every protocol screamed danger. Yet he could not ignore the possibility that it might save her. Lyra watched, her eyes wide and fearful, but she did not speak. She knew he was risking everything, and yet somehow she trusted him. Trust was a hard thing to give after loss, yet here she was, offering it silently. Naira stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering, and Eli felt a jolt of hope. Maybe it was too early to see results, or maybe it was a sign that life still lingered. He began the transfusion slowly, careful not to overload her fragile system. Each drop was measured, each second a trial against the unknown. The monitors beside Naira blinked red and yellow, warning of anomalies. Eli ignored them. He focused only on the child and the rhythm of life that still faintly pulsed inside her. Moments stretched like hours. Eli could hear his own heartbeat echoing in his ears. He thought about his own family back on Earth, about the little things that mattered and yet seemed so distant now. He thought of all the wars, all the crises, all the times humans had survived against impossible odds. Maybe, just maybe, that resilience was encoded not only in his mind but in his blood. Naira's chest spasmed suddenly and the alarm screamed. Her heartbeat faltered, dropping to near zero. Eli's stomach lurched. This could be the end. He leaned closer, hands steadying, willing her body to accept what he had given. The monitor blinked red, then green, then yellow, each color a warning and a promise. Then something unexpected happened. The child's pulse began to rise, slowly at first, then more steadily. Her fingers twitched, and her eyelids lifted to reveal eyes that blinked in confusion. She was alive. For the first time since the evacuation began, Eli allowed himself to exhale. But the changes were not over. Her skin began to shimmer faintly, tiny patterns forming like a living map beneath her surface. Her eyes, once dull with illness, seemed to focus with unusual clarity. Lyra gasped, stepping closer to the glass, her voice trembling as she asked what was happening. Eli did not know how to answer. He had not expected this. He had hoped for survival, but the visible transformation was beyond anything recorded in human or alien medical manuals. Naira's cells were reorganizing in ways that were impossible, fusing human resilience with alien adaptation. Her breathing grew stronger, and for a moment, the med bay was silent except for the faint hiss of machines. Outside the sealed doors, the station groaned and alarms continued to echo, but inside, a different tension took hold. Eli checked the monitors again, noting that her vital signs were now far more stable than they had been before. Her body, once frail, now radiated a strange vitality. He touched her small hand gently. It was warm, firm, and somehow strong beyond what it should have been. Lyra pressed her forehead to the glass, tears flowing freely again, but this time mixed with awe. She whispered her daughter's name softly, almost afraid to speak it aloud. Naira blinked at her, recognition in her gaze, though something more lingered, a spark, an energy, a sense of awareness that no ordinary child possessed. Eli sat back, exhausted, his blood loss catching up with him. Every muscle ached, but he did not regret a single moment. He had acted without thinking, without council approval, without permission, and it had worked. He had saved a life and maybe done something more. Naira stirred again, this time responding to the voices around her. She looked at Eli, then at her mother, and a small, almost human-like smile appeared on her face. Lyra gasped and whispered, her voice cracking, asking if this was really happening. Eli nodded, though he did not fully understand what had occurred. He only knew that against all odds she had survived. The med bay door hissed and a team of alien specialists entered, alerted by the privacy seal. Their eyes widened as they took in the sight of the child, stable, awake, and visibly different. They exchanged words in rapid succession, gesturing to the monitors and to Naira. Eli tried to explain, but the language barrier and their disbelief slowed understanding. One of them finally stepped forward and examined the child, muttering words that sounded like amazement and fear. Lyra sank to the floor, holding her daughter close as she finally allowed herself a moment of relief. Eli watched them, feeling a mixture of triumph and dread. The council would never approve of what he had done, and yet he could not imagine doing anything else. He had acted with instinct, driven by a need to protect, and the result was beyond belief. As the specialists continued their examination, Naira began to move with a fluidity and strength that was alarming. She lifted her small hands, testing her body, and then instinctively dodged a minor disturbance in the room, a reflex too fast for anyone to have taught her. The alien scientists froze, staring at the child as she moved with awareness that should have been impossible for her age and condition. Eli felt a chill run down his spine. The child was no longer just alive. She was changed. He could not predict what her body might do next, what abilities might awaken, or what challenges would follow. The moment was fragile, a mixture of triumph and uncertainty, and he knew the real danger had only just begun. The station continued to drift, alarms still echoing, a reminder that the outside world had not forgiven them yet. But inside the med bay, life pulsed with stubborn determination. Eli leaned against a console, bloodied and exhausted, and watched as the child he had saved explored her new reality. She looked at him with trust and curiosity, a bond formed in the crucible of fear and instinct. Somewhere in the recesses of his mind, Eli realized that this act, reckless and forbidden as it was, had shifted something fundamental. The line between human and alien, between what was possible and what was impossible, had been blurred. He had crossed it without thinking, and now he could only hope that the outcome would not demand a higher price than they were prepared to pay. The days stretched on, punctuated by soft alarms, hushed voices, and the faint hum of machinery. Outside, the stars burned coldly, indifferent to the small miracle inside the orbital refuge. Eli and Lyra watched Naira together, their hopes intertwined, fragile but alive. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Eli knew that what had begun here would change everything, both for the child and for those who would learn of what humanity was capable of. Naira's recovery was unlike anything Eli had ever seen. Each day her strength grew, and with it, a strange awareness that seemed beyond her years. The alien specialists continued their tests, scanning and recording every change, but even their most advanced instruments could not explain the rapid adaptations occurring within her small body. Her cells repaired at an astonishing speed, her reflexes sharpened, and she began to anticipate dangers before they even happened. Eli remained at her side, though his body was still weak from the blood he had given. He watched her closely, noticing subtle changes, a twitch here, a sudden movement there. Naira's eyes seemed to perceive things beyond the ordinary, tracking motions that no child her age should notice. She could react to threats instinctively, moving faster than anyone expected. Her survival instincts were extraordinary, almost as if she carried a new kind of life within her. Lyra was amazed and frightened. She held Naira close, marveling at her daughter's resilience while fearing what the long-term effects might be. Her species had never seen anything like this. They whispered among themselves, speculating, questioning, and at times arguing whether what Eli had done was a miracle or a dangerous mutation. Eli remained quiet, unsure himself. He had acted on instinct, without thinking, and now the results were beyond comprehension. News of Naira's condition began to spread quietly through the refuge. Survivors whispered about the human who had given his blood to save an alien child and the impossible recovery that followed. Some called it a miracle, others feared it. A few military officers sent word up the chain, reporting the presence of a child with unusual abilities. Their reports were met with skepticism, but the curiosity had been planted. Eli spent his days teaching Naira simple lessons, guiding her through basic movements and observing her reactions. She learned quickly, far faster than any human or alien child should. She could sense subtle changes in the environment, anticipate the smallest shifts, and move with precision that was impossible for her size. Eli realized that she was not just healing, she was evolving. One afternoon, as alarms sounded across the station, Eli witnessed something that left him stunned. A minor power failure caused a crate to topple in the hall outside the med bay. Naira reacted instantly, moving to shield a small group of frightened children before the crate could fall. Her speed and awareness were beyond human, beyond her species. Lyra, watching through the glass, could not believe what she saw. Her child had become a protector, a guardian, and the reality of Eli's decision was undeniable. The alien specialists convened a meeting to discuss Naira's condition. They debated whether to inform the council or continue observation in secrecy. Eli attended, answering questions as best he could, though many concepts were lost in translation. One specialist finally admitted that the child's reaction to human blood had created a hybrid resilience that was unprecedented. She was alive because of humanity's instincts to protect and adapt, a fusion of human courage and alien biology. As the station continued to drift through space, a distant fleet was detected approaching. Sensors warned of incoming hostile ships, the same force that had destroyed the child's homeworld. Panic spread through the refuge, but Naira did not falter. She stood beside Eli and Lyra, her small frame ready, aware of the approaching threat in a way no one could fully explain. Her presence calmed the frightened and emboldened the weary. Eli felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. He had saved Naira, but now he understood that her survival carried consequences beyond their immediate circle. The fleet's arrival meant danger for everyone aboard the station, and the child's abilities, while miraculous, were untested in real conflict. He wondered if he had done the right thing. He wondered if he had created a weapon or a miracle. When the first hostile ships came into view, Eli and the specialists worked frantically to strengthen shields and prepare defenses. Naira moved among the med bay and corridors, protecting the vulnerable, reacting to threats with instincts that seemed almost prescient. Her actions inspired hope among the survivors and fear among the invaders, who found themselves confronted by a child who should not have survived, let alone reacted with such precision. In the moments before engagement, Eli realized that humanity's strength was more than physical resilience. It was instinct, determination, and the willingness to act without waiting for permission. He saw that Naira embodied this principle in a new form, a symbol of what could happen when humans cross species boundaries, not out of conquest but out of compassion. The first skirmish erupted near the docking bay. Explosions shook the station, and alarms screamed. Naira moved instinctively, shielding others and striking with precision that defied her size. Eli followed, guiding where he could, but mostly watching in awe as the child he had saved became a beacon of resilience. Lyra's cries turned from fear to amazement, witnessing her daughter's transformation and understanding that her survival was a direct result of human courage. When the battle subsided, the hostile ships retreated, confused and wary. Reports would later describe the anomaly aboard the refuge, a child who survived impossible conditions and acted with the awareness of a seasoned warrior. Eli and Lyra embraced Naira, exhausted but relieved, understanding that their lives had been irrevocably changed. In quiet moments that followed, Eli reflected on the journey. His single act of giving blood, of risking himself without thinking, had created a ripple effect far larger than he imagined. Naira's survival and evolving abilities had proven the potential of human instinct and compassion, showing that even in the darkest moments, a single choice could alter the fate of many. As the station drifted silently once more, Eli, Lyra, and Naira stood together, bound by circumstance and courage. They did not know what challenges awaited them, but they knew that their actions had created hope, resilience, and a new understanding of what humans were capable of. And somewhere in the vast expanse of stars, the universe itself seemed to take notice of a small child who would not break and the human who acted without thinking. The refuge was tense, the air thick with the smell of smoke and the low hum of damaged systems. Survivors moved cautiously, knowing that the hostile fleet had detected their presence. Eli and Lyra stayed close to Naira, guiding her through the corridors as she moved with alertness and precision beyond her size. Her senses had sharpened in ways that were impossible for any child, yet she acted naturally, instinctively protecting those around her. The enemy forces boarded the station with efficiency, moving quickly to secure control. Panic spread among the refugees, but Naira remained calm, observing and reacting in ways no one could predict. She led small groups to safety, dodging debris and guiding the weak and frightened with careful, quick movements. Every step she took demonstrated an awareness that seemed almost supernatural. Eli, though still weak, followed her, assisting wherever he could. He saw her block a falling support beam with her small frame, her strength far exceeding what it should have been. Alien specialists who had doubted his actions now watched in silent astonishment. Naira's resilience and instinctive courage had turned her into a guardian, and even seasoned soldiers could not anticipate her moves. Lyra tried to stay close, worried for her child but unable to restrain her. She whispered words of caution, but Naira only nodded, her focus unbroken. It was as if she had absorbed the instinct to protect, to survive, and to act without hesitation. Each corridor they moved through tested her abilities, yet she emerged unscathed, guiding others to temporary safety. The invaders were confused by the unexpected resistance. Small squads of their soldiers fell back, unsure how to counter a child who moved with such awareness and skill. Reports to their command described an anomaly aboard the station, a hybrid being with capabilities beyond expectation. Fear and uncertainty spread through the enemy ranks, and their morale faltered. Eli and Naira reached the central control hub, where they tried to reinforce the station's defenses. Explosions shook the structure, and alarms screamed warnings, but Naira's calm focus allowed her to anticipate danger. She helped reroute power, blocked hazards, and guided frightened refugees to safer zones. Her actions inspired those around her, giving the survivors courage to resist rather than flee. Lyra watched with tears streaming down her face, a mixture of pride and fear. Her daughter was alive, thriving, and changing in ways she could not fully understand. The human who had acted without thinking had not only saved her child, but had created a force the station desperately needed. Eli, bleeding and exhausted, realized that the instincts and courage he had relied on were now mirrored in Naira, magnified by her unique biology. The invaders attempted to breach the central hub, but Naira anticipated their moves, blocking corridors, moving debris, and using her strength to protect others. Her awareness allowed her to act before the enemy could strike, saving dozens of lives in moments that felt like seconds. The small child had become a shield and a weapon, her presence reshaping the battle without strategy or orders. As the fight continued, the hostile forces grew wary. They had expected minimal resistance, perhaps panicked civilians, but instead faced a child with reflexes, speed, and intuition far beyond anything they had seen. They retreated temporarily, regrouping and reporting back on the anomaly. Eli and Lyra used the pause to move survivors toward escape pods, guided by Naira's uncanny ability to sense danger. After the skirmish, the station was damaged but intact. Survivors gathered in the main hall, exhausted but alive. Eli looked at Naira, realizing that her survival and abilities were a result of human courage and instinct. He understood that humanity's strength was not in weapons or technology alone, but in the willingness to act, to protect, and to endure. Lyra embraced her daughter tightly, unable to contain her emotions. She whispered thanks to Eli, tears flowing freely, acknowledging that without his decision to act without thinking, Naira would not have survived. Eli nodded, too tired for words, watching the small child who had become a beacon of hope. In the quiet moments that followed, Eli reflected on what had happened. The battle had revealed more than just Naira's abilities. It showed that human instincts could create change in ways that transcended understanding. He realized that the galaxy might never see humans the same way again, and perhaps fear and awe would follow their presence wherever they went. Naira, meanwhile, stood near the central console, surveying the hall. Though young, she exuded calm authority, moving naturally to protect others. The alien specialists who had once doubted Eli's actions now watched in awe, recording every movement, every reaction. The child had not only survived but had changed the station's course and the perception of what humans could accomplish. Eli knew that the battle was only a beginning. The enemy would return, stronger and more determined. Yet he also knew that Naira's presence would inspire courage and resistance wherever they went. Humanity's instinct to act, to protect, and to endure had been demonstrated in the most unexpected way, through a single child who had been saved at the cost of human blood and risk. As the station continued to drift silently through space, the survivors regrouped. They were weary but alive, and their trust in each other, strengthened by Naira's actions, was unshakable. Eli and Lyra stood together, watching the child who had become both symbol and shield. He understood that the choice he had made without thinking had consequences far beyond their immediate moment, and that the galaxy was about to notice humanity in a way they had never imagined. The station drifted quietly through space, though the tension among its inhabitants was palpable. Eli, Lyra, and Naira moved through the corridors, ensuring that survivors were safe and organized. Though the immediate danger had passed, the reality of the enemy's return loomed over them. Every shadow, every alarm reminded them that the battle was far from over. Naira had grown in confidence and strength, her abilities now fully apparent. She could sense approaching threats, move with precision, and protect others in ways that astonished even the alien specialists. She had become a living symbol of resilience, a bridge between human instinct and alien biology. Survivors whispered about her in awe, recognizing that her presence had saved countless lives. Eli observed her closely, proud yet cautious. He knew that the child's unique abilities would draw attention, possibly dangerous attention, but he also knew that she represented something greater than any weapon or technology. She embodied humanity's instinct to survive, to protect, and to act without hesitation. Lyra stayed near her daughter, protective yet trusting. She had witnessed what human courage could do, and she understood that Eli's choice to act without thinking had not only saved her child, but had also changed the course of events for everyone aboard the station. Her gratitude was silent but profound, a bond that connected her, Eli, and Naira in ways that transcended words. The council aboard the orbital network was soon informed of the anomaly. Naira, a child who had survived impossible conditions, demonstrated strength, awareness, and resilience beyond expectation. Discussions began about whether to contain, study, or request humanity's assistance in future crises. Some feared the power she represented, others saw it as a potential safeguard for endangered colonies. When the enemy returned, their ships approached cautiously, uncertain after their previous defeat. Eli and the specialists worked to reinforce the station, while Naira instinctively took positions that optimized protection for the vulnerable. She moved among corridors, shielding children, directing adults, and neutralizing hazards with speed and precision. Her actions were deliberate yet instinctive, a combination of natural ability and human influence. The invaders, expecting minimal resistance, were met with a coordinated defense guided by Naira's extraordinary senses. Even seasoned soldiers hesitated as she predicted their movements, dodging attacks and guiding survivors to safety. The battle was tense, chaotic, and dangerous, but the presence of the child inspired hope and courage among the refugees. Eli, though still weak, assisted where possible. He marveled at Naira's abilities, realizing that the instinctive human courage he had given through his blood had created something new, an unpredictable force capable of altering outcomes even against overwhelming odds. Lyra watched, tears in her eyes, understanding that the child's survival and strength were a testament to human compassion and sacrifice. After hours of conflict, the enemy forces retreated once more, leaving the station damaged but intact. Survivors emerged from hiding, weary but alive, inspired by the courage displayed by the child who should not have survived. Naira moved among them, her presence a calming and empowering force. She guided those injured to safety, ensured that the weak were protected, and stood vigilant, anticipating future dangers. In the quiet that followed, Eli reflected on the journey. His impulsive act of giving blood, of risking his own life, had created a ripple effect far greater than he could have imagined. Naira's survival and evolving abilities proved the power of human instinct, the willingness to act without thinking, and the courage to protect life against all odds. Lyra embraced Naira, her tears flowing freely, filled with awe and gratitude. She looked at Eli and silently thanked him for the impossible choice that had saved her daughter and transformed the station's fate. Eli nodded, exhausted but content, knowing that he had done what he could and that it had mattered. The station, though scarred, continued to drift through space. Survivors began to rebuild, guided by the courage and inspiration Naira embodied. Eli understood that this moment was only the beginning, that humanity's presence and instincts would be called upon in the galaxy's darkest hours. Naira had become a symbol of that hope, a child who had survived impossible conditions and represented the potential of human courage. As new challenges approached, the galaxy would take notice. Humanity would not always be the strongest in terms of weapons or fleets, but their instinct to act, protect, and endure would shape the future. Eli watched Naira, standing tall and aware, and realized that the smallest acts of courage could ripple outward, changing the fate of countless lives. The stars outside the station remained cold and indifferent, yet within the walls, life persisted, strengthened by the choices of one human and the resilience of one child. The galaxy would remember in whispers and stories that sometimes survival, courage, and compassion could achieve what force alone could not. And as long as humans acted without hesitation to protect life, hope would endure.